Imagine a world split in two. On one side, a billion people live in abundance. They have access to resources, technology, and opportunities. This is the golden billion. On the other side, billions more struggle with poverty, conflict, and environmental degradation. This stark division lies at the heart of the golden billion theory. It suggests that the world's wealth, resources, and power are concentrated in the hands of this privileged few, largely residing in developed nations. The golden billion theory argues that this disparity is not accidental. It claims that the global system is structured to maintain this imbalance, perpetuating a cycle of inequality. This system, critics argue, favors the interests of the wealthy billion, often at the expense of the developing world. This theory challenges us to confront uncomfortable truths about our interconnected world. The golden billion theory isn't just an academic concept. It's a lens through which we can view global inequalities, from climate change to resource scarcity. It forces us to ask, who benefits from this system, and at what cost? Understanding the golden billion theory is crucial for anyone who wants to make sense of the 21st century. It's about power, resources, and the future of humanity. It's about understanding the forces that shape our world and our place within it. It's about recognizing our shared responsibility to create a more just and sustainable future for all. The golden billion theory didn't emerge in a vacuum. Its roots can be traced back to critiques of colonialism, imperialism, and the global economic order. Thinkers and activists have long pointed to the uneven distribution of wealth and power between the global North and South. The term golden billion itself is attributed to Russian political scientist Anatoly Tsigankov in the 1990s. However, the underlying concept resonates with earlier works. Frantz Fanon's The Wretched of the Earth, 1961 for instance, exposed the brutal realities of colonialism and its impact on the colonized. Similarly, dependency theory, popular in the 1960s and 70s, argued that developing nations are trapped in a cycle of dependence on wealthy nations. These earlier critiques laid the groundwork for the golden billion theory. The golden billion theory suggests that while colonialism may have officially ended, its legacy lives on in the global economic system. This system, critics argue, continues to favor former colonial powers, perpetuating inequalities between the global North and South. The golden billion theory points to a specific group of beneficiaries, the populations of wealthy, developed nations primarily in North America, Europe, and parts of Asia. These nations control a disproportionate share of global wealth, resources, and political power. They benefit from a system that prioritizes their economic interests, often at the expense of developing countries. This includes access to cheap labor, raw materials, and markets in the developing world. The benefits extend beyond national borders. Individuals within these countries also enjoy a higher standard of living, greater access to education and healthcare, and more opportunities for economic advancement. However, it's crucial to acknowledge that not everyone within these nations benefits equally. Inequality exists within developed countries, with marginalized communities often facing systemic barriers. The golden billion theory isn't just a theoretical construct. Its historical footprints can be traced through centuries of colonialism, industrialization, and globalization. The colonial era saw European powers extracting resources and exploiting labor in Asia, Africa, and the Americas, accumulating wealth that fueled their own development. This legacy of exploitation continues to shape global inequalities today. The Industrial Revolution further widened the gap between the global North and South. Industrialized nations secured their dominance through technological advancements and mass production, often relying on raw materials extracted from their former colonies. Globalization, while connecting the world, has also exacerbated these inequalities. While it has created opportunities for some in the developing world, it has also led to the exploitation of cheap labor and environmental degradation in many regions. Section 5, a contested idea examining the evidence and the critique. The golden billion theory is not without its critics. Some argue that it's an overly simplistic view of a complex world. They point to the rise of emerging economies like China and India as evidence that the global balance of power is shifting. Others criticize the theory for its focus on material wealth as the sole indicator of well-being. They argue that factors like social justice, environmental sustainability, and cultural diversity are equally important. Critics also point to instances where developed nations have contributed to development efforts in the global south. They highlight foreign aid, debt relief programs, and technological transfers as examples of positive contributions. While these critiques have merit, they don't negate the core argument of the golden billion theory, that systemic inequalities persist, and that the global system often favors the interests of the wealthy and powerful. Section 6. The Global North's Advantage: Wealth, Resources, and Power. Despite criticisms, the golden billion theory highlights a stark reality: the concentration of wealth, resources, and power in the hands of a select few. Developed nations control the lion's share of global financial institutions, multinational corporations, and technological advancements. They set the rules of the global game, often in ways that benefit their own interests. This includes trade agreements that favor their industries, intellectual property laws that restrict access to technology, and control over international institutions like the United Nations Security Council. The disparity in resource consumption is equally striking. The golden billion consumes a disproportionate amount of the world's energy, water, and food, contributing significantly to global environmental problems like climate change and deforestation. This concentration of power allows the golden billion to maintain its privileged position, perpetuating a cycle of inequality that is difficult to break. Section 7. Beyond the billion: Emerging Economies and the Shifting Balance. The global landscape is not static. The rise of emerging economies, particularly China and India, presents a challenge to the traditional narrative of the golden billion. These nations are experiencing rapid economic growth, technological advancements, and increasing global influence. China, for instance, has become a global economic powerhouse, investing heavily in infrastructure, technology, and manufacturing. India, with its booming IT sector and growing middle class, is also emerging as a major player on the world stage. This shift in economic power has led some to argue that the golden billion theory is outdated. They point to the potential for these emerging economies to uplift millions from poverty and reshape the global order. However, it's important to note that these emerging economies also face significant challenges, including inequality, environmental degradation, and political instability. Their rise does not necessarily mean an end to global disparities. Section 8. The Price of Inequality: Conflict, Poverty, and Environmental Degradation. The golden billion theory is not just an abstract concept. Its consequences are felt in the lives of billions around the world. Inequality breeds instability, fuels conflict, and hinders development. Poverty, hunger, and lack of access to education and healthcare are rampant in many parts of the developing world. These conditions create fertile ground for extremism, conflict, and mass migration. Environmental degradation is another consequence of this unequal system. The golden billion's unsustainable consumption patterns are driving climate change, deforestation, and resource depletion, disproportionately impacting vulnerable communities in the global south. The golden billion theory forces us to confront the interconnectedness of our world. It reminds us that our actions have consequences, and that the pursuit of self-interest at the expense of others is ultimately unsustainable. Section 9. A Call for Change: Sustainable Development and Global Justice. The golden billion theory is not a prophecy of inevitable doom. It's a call to action. It urges us to rethink our relationship with each other and with the planet. It demands a shift towards a more just and sustainable world order. This requires a fundamental reassessment of our economic systems, consumption patterns, and development models. It necessitates a move away from a system based on endless growth, and towards one that prioritizes well-being, equity, and environmental sustainability. Achieving this vision requires global cooperation, dialogue, and a commitment to shared responsibility. It demands that we dismantle the structures of inequality and create a world where everyone has an equal opportunity to thrive. Section 10. Rethinking the Future: Towards a More Equitable World Order. The golden billion theory challenges us to imagine a different future, a future where resources are shared more equitably, where development is measured not just by economic growth, but by human well-being and environmental sustainability. This future requires a paradigm shift. It demands that we move away from a system based on competition and dominance towards one rooted in cooperation and solidarity. It requires a recognition that our fates are interconnected, and that our collective survival depends on our ability to create a more just and equitable world. This is not a utopian dream, it's a necessity. The challenges facing humanity in the 21st century, from climate change to global inequality, demand a fundamental rethinking of our values and priorities. Section 11, Our Interconnected Destiny Recognizing Our Shared Humanity. The Golden Billion Theory, while a stark reminder of global inequalities, also highlights our interconnectedness. We live on a finite planet with limited resources. Our actions have consequences that transcend national borders. Recognizing our shared humanity is essential for addressing the challenges facing our world. It requires empathy, compassion, and a commitment to justice and equality for all. It means understanding that our well-being is inextricably linked to the well-being of others, regardless of where they live. The Golden Billion Theory is not just an academic exercise, it's a call to action. It's a reminder that we have a choice to perpetuate a system of inequality and exploitation, or to create a more just and sustainable future for all. The choice is ours.